Hello, welcome back once again to Watch Time. I just want to start by thanking everybody who has interacted with the videos I've previously uploaded by liking, subscribing, all that sort of thing. Comments, of course. That's the whole point in this, is to have some sort of discussion about these things. So yeah, I just want to show a bit of gratitude for that. Today we're going to talk about something which is obviously huge in the watch industry and always has been, and that is the kind of, I'm not going to say the art of, but the existence of fakery. I've noticed recently that it's so much more common than I thought as well. The reason is that I've been talking to people I work with recently, and they know I'm interested in watches, so they've all been bringing me these watches in saying, is this real, is this fake? And I'm not an expert, of course, but you can tell quite easily when you've held enough of the real thing. And obviously, you know, if a watch is meant to be worth £6,000, you'll quickly realise if something isn't right. So I have today looked at a Gucci watch, which was very fake as well, and a Tag Heuer watch, which is very fake, and I might actually bring that one back in for another video, I think. But I wanted to talk about this Breitling one because there's a lot that this Breitling watch has actually done right, although it is a fake, so it's not a Breitling watch, of course. But of course there are some very easy giveaways. So let's talk first of all about the dial. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a polish here. So from a distance, I'm sure you'll agree, it does look very much like a Navitimer, which of course, again, is one of Breitling's most famous watches, if not the most famous watch that they make. So in terms of choosing which model to fake, not a bad idea at all. Very noticeable design. So yeah, I'm not surprised they went for the Navitimer style there. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware that this is a very homaged watch as well. Some brands which come to mind which homage this very intensely are Rotary, and I think Rotary is the one which comes to mind most strongly, and there are others of course, but yeah, very famous design there, so they went for kind of a safe design choice. Interestingly, this is the for Bentley Motors one, so I'm sure the Breitling collectors out there will know this already, but to anyone who doesn't, Breitling has now and then made partnerships with other companies, one of which being Bentley, and you can still find watches out there with the Breitling and Bentley partnership, which is kind of a bit like the Patek Philippe Tiffany sort of thing, where it's an extra element to the design and to the collectability. So I think they've put that on there to make it look like more of a rare edition, just to make it look somehow more attractive. As far as I'm aware, this isn't an actual Breitling for Bentley Motors edition. The ones that I've seen which were genuine were in a kind of rectangular shape, so I'm not sure this is the one that actually exists, but they have stolen that, let's refer to it as a title. They've chosen to copy the Breitling for Bentley edition. At first glance, especially on this camera, things don't look too good on the back. In person, it doesn't look so bad actually, because the camera's picking up the finish of the metal and much better than the naked eye does. But you can see just looking at it that it's a very poor quality of metal there. The reflective coating is just terrible, and the polishing, maybe the better word for it is polishing actually, the polishing is absolutely terrible. You can see if you look closely that it has a very small movement in it, and it has one of those very cheap plastic housings around it. I mean, so this was just a 100% absolutely fake thing, a fake signifier instantly. So I didn't really need to look any further than this, although the dial itself is obvious, but yeah, this was a 100% confirmed fake when you could see through this exhibition back. And this turbine here, which is borrowed from the turbine of an aircraft, on a real Breitling watch, that would be the rotor. And as you can see, it has a rotor inside the watch movement. So again, another giveaway. I mean, it's just terrible, that plastic housing there for the movement. That is something you would see on a cheap watch. Unless one can correct me below, that really is not something you would ever see on an expensive watch. For example, yesterday I was replacing the batteries for somebody in a Fossil watch, and a Fossil watch had that. Not a Breitling watch. So, very clear giveaway, of course. Next thing is, as you can see here, I'm not a metal expert, but I'm quite sure this isn't stainless steel, or if it is, it's not a very high grade, because you can see here that the strap has worn some of the metal away and it's actually rusted, so it can't be stainless if it's stained, can it? So I found that quite interesting. It looks as if the bracelet has actually left very distinctive scratches in it as well, on both sides, so it's clearly not made very well for the case. The pushers do work, as you can see there. That one does anyway, and I don't really know what the hell these things are doing. You can see that's 24-hour time. You can see that's time in 2-hour increments. This, I don't have a clue. Maybe someone can help me out in the comments below on that. As I like to openly admit, I'm not the most knowledgeable person in the world about all the ins and outs of different chronographs. Usually I can work them out, but in this case I have no idea what that's supposed to be. I don't know what the significance of 5 and 2 is. I don't know if it's some kind of world time function. With this being a pilot's watch, that wouldn't be such a bad idea. Obviously it has a lot of different functions on the inside bezel there. Again, I've never really owned a proper pilot's watch, so I'm not sure about how they work exactly. I'm a lover of the bezel. I use bezels a lot and world times, but this I'm not so sure. So that's a learning curve I still need to go on. But as I mentioned at the start, the dial itself isn't too bad. I noticed down here at about here you can see a blob that breaks the flush sort of curve there, if that makes any sense. So that blob obviously wouldn't be there on a real Breitling. They would never make mistakes on the dial like that, so that's a very clear indicator as well. The bezel, I don't know, at first glance it probably looks like it's trying to look like diamonds, but it isn't. It's just has this particular sort of pattern on it, and I don't think it's executed too badly, and it is in keeping with the Navitimer style, where the bezel is sort of very precisely tooled, but it's not quite the same. The pattern is a little bit off, and what I don't want to do is bring up a real Breitling for comparison on the screen, because I don't have one in person anymore. I used to have a Endurance Pro, but I sold it. But I'm sure if you look up Navitimer, you'll see that this pattern isn't quite correct. Not that it's done badly, it's just not quite correct. Other thing is, I'm not actually sure whether the crystal is sapphire or not, but on a Breitling Navitimer it would be. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know, it's hard to say. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. It doesn't feel terrible, but I can't say for sure it is. On the back feels a lot more like mineral. which is not unusual. So it reads Breitling for Bentley Special Edition, certified chronometer, which is a joke. 100 meters water resistance. This is obviously, with it being a fake, I wouldn't take it underwater anyway, because it's not certified in the slightest. The movement, I would hazard a guess at it being a Chinese movement to keep the price down, to keep the costs down. And yeah, generally it covers all bases of fake. On first glance it looks alright, but when you get closer you see there's a lot of quality issues. Obviously the crown there you can see is quite degraded for no apparent reason. Maybe last thing I would mention is that it is manual. It can be manually wound as well as having the automatic movement. So it's not like it's a terrible movement or anything. It's just certainly not a Breitling movement, which would be an ETA most likely, and it certainly isn't one of those. Generally, the quality of the metal it has weight to it, but it's not very good. It's not very consistent. It certainly looks cheap up close. But I think I can understand why somebody who doesn't have the money for the real thing would probably buy this, although it kind of is an illegal concept. They would buy this because at first glance the untrained eye probably wouldn't notice, apart from the fact it is really huge. Even for a Breitling, it is really huge, because Breitling I wouldn't say are famous for making very small watches, but this thing is massive. So I think maybe perhaps I thought the bigger the better. The bigger the statement, the better. The bracelet, I'll give it to them that they've got the stylum right. Breitling often do have a lot more creative bracelets. You can see here it's on an angle as it goes down. It's not just straight like an oyster bracelet, and that is in keeping with the Breitling style. It has a safety clasp as well, which is in keeping with the style. And it's not just, well, it's extremely cheap, but it's not just the standard really, really disgustingly cheap flimsy metal that you see. It's had a little bit of work into it. Terrible grade of metal though. It looks like almost like brass that's been sprayed. I can't be sure of that, but that's the only way I can describe the quality of the metal. It just looks so uneven and terrible. I would like to say the bracelet is worse than the watch, but the quality of the metal is bad throughout, actually very, very bad. So that's the bracelet there as well. So I thought it would be a good opportunity just to really show you what a fake Breitling can look like. I wouldn't say this one's a particularly good one. I don't know how much the person paid for it, or whether they did pay for it. I think probably the best bit about this watch, if you want to talk about it in that sense, is the dial is fairly accurate, and the Breitling logo itself looks pretty good. That's certainly in keeping with the real Breitling logo. The exhibition back is fairly terrible, but of course that would be on the wrist most of the time, and maybe at a quick glance people would be like, oh yeah, well there's the turbine that you do see on the real thing. But it's frankly a bad job of covering that up with that terrible movement underneath. So yeah, I think my final summary is, I'm sure you all know it's not something I would wear because I don't really like fakes. I've never worn a fake watch ever. But judgment aside, I think somebody who wants to look like they're wearing a Navitimer probably would at first glance in this. But if anybody has even the slightest knowledge of watches, they would be able to tell it's fake very quickly. And that seems to be a standard amongst fake watches, unless you pay a lot of money for them. So it's been a bit of a ramble there about that watch. Obviously I would never encourage somebody to buy a fake. I hope this video will point out to some of you who are thinking about buying a watch or are unsure whether it's fake or not. For example, if a friend's offered this for £50, you would think, this is the kind of thing that a Breitling for Bentley would probably be costing a lot of money. Like, I would assume at least £5,000 at retail if it were a real watch, which it isn't. So if someone's offering it to you for £50, it's probably not looking good, is it? And then if you notice these other things, you know, poor quality of metal, why would they put plastic inside of a really, really expensive watch? Why does the metal look uneven, as I said? Why is there little blobs on the dial? Why does the bracelet feel like tin foil? I'll just say you can really tell the difference when you put the real thing side by side. Maybe not visually at first, but certainly when you feel the quality. So I hope you found this video somewhat entertaining or interesting. Again, my disclaimer, if I were you, I would never buy a fake watch. I only have this because it belongs to somebody else, and that's their choice, of course. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or comments, please drop them below. But until next time, please let me know what you think.